Greetings dear viewer. You might have seen the show Breaking Bad, starring heroic hero Walter White and idiotic sidekick Jesse Pinkman. Most people argue that Walter White is the worst character in Breaking Bad, often citing misinformation or their media illiteracy as a source. However, this video will explain why Walter is a hero, how Skyler is the villain, and how Jesse goes from an idiot to a master of mythology. Most people cite Walter as a criminal, liar, abusive husband and child killer, with Skyler White as a victim suffering from Walt's actions. However, this is entirely false, as I will explain now. Walter never did anything morally wrong. Illegal yes, but not wrong. The first claim is that Walter sells meth. It's true and isn't very hidden. Breaking Bad's main plot is Walter being a meth cook. However, it's stated this is very immoral of Walt and is somehow a bad thing, but this is just plain wrong. First, it's stated in the show by Walter himself that things simply go from illegal to legal in different periods. Walt doesn't live by the law, but by logic. If a society outlaws certain consumables but allows others that are similar, is it really a law worth following? Walter also never had meth as a first resort to pay his cancer treatment. He first tried to make corn pops using his culinary skills, which Tuco started a business for. However, there was an obstacle in his way: Skyler White. She took his product's money and gave it to Ted. This prevented Walter from using this method to pay for treatment. Something you could say is, didn't Elliot offer him a job at Matter Industries and his son tried raising a fundraiser? It's true Elliot offered Walter money to treat his cancer. Walter even took this money in secret behind Skyler, but she still discovered it and gave it to Ted. This made Elliot enraged, as money that was supposed to save Walter was wasted, prompting him to threaten Walter with a knife. Walter, with a still pure heart, told Elliot,
"If we're gonna go that way, you'll need a bigger knife,"
telling him that he needs to improve his self-defense. Even while being threatened, Walt still cares about his friend. The other claim is that Walter rejected Flynn's fundraiser money, but as you already learned, whatever money Walter needs, Skyler gives to Ted. The second criminal claim is that Walter murders people. However, this is mostly out of self-defense. Walter never killed anyone innocent, but regardless, let's look into more detail. First person is Crazy 8, a madman who broke Walter's plate and attempted to use it to stab him. Walter tried calming 8 down, however the man was beyond insane. In a last attempt to defend himself, Walter used his telekinesis to grab a bike lock to subdue 8, who died by stabbing himself in an attempt to escape. You might ask, telekinesis? Breaking Bad has no superpowers, and this might be true in any other show. But as we know in the prequel to Better Call Saul, Slip and Jimmy, that frog-farting demon nuns exist, so supernatural themes exist in Breaking Bad, and judging based off other scenes, we can conclude that superpowers exist in the show. Next supposed victim is Gus Fring, who isn't even killed by Walter, but Hector, Walt's close friend who is a genius physicist. You might argue that it was Walter who built the bomb and not Hector. But Walter is a chemist, not a physicist, so he has no idea about how to make an explosive device. Hector, however, had it on his wheelchair, indicating that he built it himself. Hector used the device to sacrifice himself, defeating Gus Fring and saving Walter from his evil. Next supposed victim is Jane, which many claim Walter let her die. However, this is just false. Walter didn't choose not to save her. He couldn't save her. He is a chemist, not a biologist. Walter was never able to save her. He even tells Jesse,
"I watched Jane die. I could have saved her, but I didn't."
Which Walter means, had I taken extra biology classes in college, I could have saved her, but I didn't make the right choices, meaning Walter regrets a choice he didn't know would backfire. Would you blame an artist for not learning how to put out a fire? Next victim is Gale, whom anyone who has watched the show would know Walter like. He believed in Gale and knew his coffee machine could be used to create 99.27% pure meth, thinking of them and Jesse leaving Gus and starting their own meth business. However, Gus couldn't let that happen, so he hired Skyler to brainwash Jesse to kill him. Another character is Tuco, who was actually supportive character of Walter and Jesse's business. Two things happen here. First is the explosion caused by Walter throwing the mercury. However, Walt didn't know it was mercury. He just knew it wasn't meth and wanted to ore a farm by throwing it. Now tell me, Is it wrong for a man to want to have aura? Next up is Brock, who Walter didn't even meet. Jesse just stole Walter's flowers and feed them to Mineral without Walt's consent, and even then he didn't die, so it doesn't count. Mike coming up. Wow, too was tricked by Skyler, thinking she had taken control of a rogue Mike clone. However, Walter realizes he accidentally killed the real Mike. This haunts him for the rest of his life. The plane which many people claim Walter was responsible for just doesn't make any sense, as it was obvious that it was Jane's dad's fault, and we all know by now Walter didn't kill Jane. Last but not least, Hank. Walter didn't kill Hank, it was Jack and his gang who did. We will learn in a bit that Walter didn't have control over that. However, Walter tried bringing Hank back to life, as Hank was buried under the soil with minerals, giving his spirit time to be brought back, and Walter was going to do that after the shooting finished, but Skyler took his body and burned it, preventing Walter from bringing him back to life. Next claim is Walter working with Uncle Jack and enslaving Jesse. Now, Walter wasn't a free man leading Jack and his gang, he was simply a higher-ranking slave like Jesse was, and had Walter said anything against Jack, he would have been killed alongside Jesse. However, thanks to Todd's brilliance, he was able to save Walter and Jesse from the gang's wraith. Todd is a very complex character. His uncle is obviously a terrible person, but he seems to have some good in him, as he brought Jesse pizza and ice cream, someone who knows he hates him, yet Skyler brings veggie bacon to her family who loves her. Todd also did kill Drew Sharp, however he was avenging Jesse's friend from the bloodthirsty kid. Last criminal claim is kidnapping Holly, however he couldn't have kidnapped her as she was his daughter, and he was trying to save her from her mother's insanity as Flynn was a lost cause. Also, the blood on her isn't her own, but her husband's, yet she acts like she is the victim and that Walt is a murderer. Look at what happened. Skyler attacks Walter for no reason, and he tries to protect his son, who rather than helping his dad, helps his lunatic mom. Even when Walter escapes, she pulls up her sleeves. Now tell me, if you were running after someone you cared about, would you pull up your sleeves? This shows she didn't care about Holly, as she knew she could replace her with a new minion anytime. Now, the honestly worst things Walter did were none of those, but not to say he is a perfect person would be lying. He wasted something special more than that waste of an ovary. Drew Sharp and those worthless lives on the plane. It was him throwing a perfectly good pizza on the roof. I mean, who wastes food like that? Second, he refused to go karting with Jesse. Honestly, had Jesse Waldman abandoned Walt over this, it would have been understandable. Third is a minor thing where he blew up his son, but he brought him back to life, so it doesn't matter. Fourth is that he rejected Jesse's proposal of adding chili pea to his product, which would have made the product 101% pure. Now here is everything terrible Skyler did. She made veggie bacon for her family, which gave Walter cancer. Even when her son rebelled, she coldly told him,
"Too bad. Eat it.
This smells like Band-Aids.
Eat it."
Second is the fact she cheated on her husband with Ted, but she asked for a divorce. You say, however, when Walt brought the divorce papers to her, she gave them to Ted like usual. Skyler also stole Walt's diary and left the poem page on the Heisen toilet, setting up Hank's death. When Walter tried to save Hank, she prevented him from reviving him. It's even plausible that the demon from Slippin' Jimmy is Skyler herself, with her taking a human form in Breaking Bad in order to haunt the main characters. You might say this hate is from misogyny, however every other woman is a good person except Skyler. While Skyler gave her husband a med job, Marie did such a good job Hank was cured from whatever he had and could walk again. Kim helps all no matter what happens, while Skyler refuses to help Walter and just gives him more trouble. Lydia cares about her daughter, while Skyler lies to her son. The women at Los Palos Hermanos cook delicious food, while Skyler feeds her family radioactive veggie bacon. I hope you enjoyed my truth nuke. I will post another video when the sequel to Breaking Bad is released, starring Holly White with her mentor Jesse Pinkman.